What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of MMA Live Before Lock. I am a host. I am not the host. You're usually with Jason here, but I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me today is our resident fighter, Pete Rogers. How are we doing today?
What's up, bro? What's going on? Happy to have you again. Thank you for filling in for Jason. Unfortunately, he's been getting screwed one way or another from tropical storms, hurricanes to schedule conflicts and whatnot. But hopefully we'll have him back next week because I know we all enjoy having him here. But if we don't have him here, we're lucky enough to have you here, Josh. So, I definitely appreciate you being here. And, a lot of people don't know that you have some great insight and some good experience with MMA as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. One of the Joshes is usually here if Jason can't do it. This is my second time hosting the show. Both times have been women's main events. I actually like this fight in the main event. As the main event, I don't know, but it is a good fight.
Right.
As always, the show is sponsored by PrizePicks. We have a deal for you later, but make sure you give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. It helps us out a lot. It helps you guys out. The more you like and subscribe, the more free shows we can give you, the more stuff we can give you for free on YouTube. So hit that like button, hit subscribe. So the main event today, Alexa Grasso against Viviane Araujo. Now, at first glance, when I saw the odds, I was a bit shocked to see Grasso a minus 225 favorite. That being said, if it was a 3-round fight, I think the odds would be a lot closer. 5 rounds, it could get a little hairy early for Grasso. Araujo comes out of the gate firing. She has had cardio issues. Honestly, if Araujo can't get Grasso out of there early, I feel like Alexa Grasso can win a pretty heavily striking based decision. Whether she hits the optimal lineup at 9K is the question. I think there will be some ownership on Araujo down at 7,200. I do worry, though, that in GPPs, if she can't get the job done early, she's not going to hit value. What are you seeing in this main event?
Yeah, so I mean, good analysis. I do think that the 5 rounds tilts more in Grasso's favor. Every time I've watched Viviane Araujo fight, I'm always concerned about her gas tank. I'm always like, she's kind of got a questionable gas tank. She's good for rounds 1.5, most of round 2. Round 3, she starts to kind of taper off. I mean, it's an MMA fight. It's an exhausting contest. Anytime that you're in a fight, it's challenging. You have to be in phenomenal cardiovascular shape. Some fighters like a Colby Covington are just a next level with it, whether it's the pace, the pressure, the training, the preparation. Some fighters are able to push through the boundaries. And I do look at Viviane Araujo as a little bit, she has a limited ceiling as far as how far she can go in this division, the more often that she starts to fight 5 rounds. Now, this could be one of the nights where she proves me wrong. I do think that if it was a 3-round fight, we could be looking at like a minus 160 for Alexa Grasso. And I feel like for women's MMA, anytime you start getting above minus 200, you're kind of getting into that, be careful, tread carefully. You know what I mean? Like, because underdogs smash all the time in women's MMA. It's a volatile division. And it's pretty competitive. Like let's say from anybody within the top 10 to unranked fighters. Like, it takes just a good strategy. It takes a good night. And, they're closely competitive matchups. So I'm getting to Viviane Araujo just because, like, I'm trying not to have so much Cub Swanson, Misha Serkinov, Jordan Wright, like down there on the bottom. It's like, yeah, I'll take the chance and hope that she can maybe win 3 rounds. But I am picking Alexa Grasso to get this fight done.
Yeah, and Alexa Grasso is coming off a submission victory over JoJo Wood, which I don't really put much stock into. Once you get JoJo Wood down, she kind of looks a little bit lost on the mat. That being said, I think Araujo is a better submission grappler, a better wrestler. Grasso did struggle with Carla Esparza being held down. I think a big key for Araujo early is being able to land these takedowns, because if she attempts a bunch and fails, that guy, like, I'm not a big wrestler, but if you've ever practiced wrestling and you are in this grapple heavy stuff, it is exhausting, especially if you can't land it cleanly. So I think a key for her is being able to get the fight down early and often. If she struggles at all, her gas tank is going to leave a little bit earlier, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, good points. And wrestling is so taxing on the body. It really is. So whether you're successful with takedowns or not, the fact that you are incorporating takedowns, you better be in damn good shape. So if she is going to go to the takedown well, and she's successful in rounds 1 and 2, I could still see a situation where this is a live betting standpoint for Alexa Grasso, where she gets down early and starts to, really start to come from behind and end up pulling it off because she has, better cardio. But if I'm Viviana Araujo's coach, I'm like, yeah, let's mix in takedowns because you are the better wrestler here. For grappling, I feel like it's really close. But as far as wrestling, I think that she can control Alexa Grasso. We just have to be very careful with it because we don't want to shoot 5 takedowns in round 1. Yeah. And you know what I mean? Like at that pace, yeah, it's a recipe for a disaster for 25 minutes.
Yeah. And a kind of a comp, they're not exactly the same fighter, but Araujo fought Caitlin Chukagian, and Caitlin Chukagian definitely wants to keep the fight on the outside.
Yeah.
The big difference between Chukagian and Grasso is Chukagian spams a lot of kicks. Grasso is more of a boxing first type fighter. So the key for Grasso, I think, is just keeping the fight on the outside, spamming her jab and taking over late. Like you said, live betting opportunity. There is a path where Araujo's up 2-0 going into the 3rd round and Grasso just wins the last 3 rounds. So if you are better, this is a good live betting opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm getting to both sides of the fight. Will it be an optimal fight? Obviously, if Araujo wins, she's optimal, most likely. Does Alexa Grasso do enough in a win to make it into the optimal when we have a ton of 9,000 options that are in enticing matchups, even though they're not the most reliable favorites? But I do think that there's going to be some high scores today.
Yeah, so let's talk about that top range here. The 2 of the biggest favorites on the card seem pretty untrustworthy to me. We have Pete Rodriguez as a massive minus 660 favorite over notable not professional MMA fighter Mike Jackson, who's for some reason still in UFC, and Victor Henry, who went from a plus 400 underdog against Ronnie Barcelos, and that was a minus 400 favorite against Rafael Asunciao. Not really sure I trust those odds, but they are 2 of the more expensive fighters on the slate. In that top range as well is Joe Anderson Burrito, who came out and just starched Cub Swanson in the 1st round. He is an explosive fighter. Also up in that range is Tatsuro Taira. I guess we can throw Alonzo Menafield in that top tier group as well. 2 of the biggest favorites on the card. If you are, a guy who just uses an optimizer and you don't really know the fighters, you're going to end up getting a lot of Pete Rodriguez because he has a massive inside the distance prop as well. Victor Henry somehow is minus 400, but his inside the distance prop is pretty bad. What are you doing with these top end guys here?
Yeah. So, I mean, under a microscope, I don't trust Pete Rodriguez. Like I really do not. And to see almost minus 750 odds on a fighter who got absolutely starched against my boy, Jack Della Maddalena.
He's legit though.
Yeah. Jack Della is one of the biggest, one of my favorite prospects in the sport. This is a massive step down in competition going from Jack Della to Mike Jackson. Now, I do think that Mike Jackson can pose problems. I just don't think that Mike Jackson's a good fighter. So like I'm getting to Mike Jackson and some of them because for most of his training, he likes to rely on his boxing and he is going to have a height and reach advantage in this matchup. So straight punches were a significant issue for Pete Rodriguez. The questions about Pete Rodriguez are what happens if he's, tested in rounds 2 and 3. He's a prolific round 1 guy, which would make him one of the best boom plays on the slate because of how early he wins his fights and how aggressive he is. But on the flip side of that, he's super untrustworthy. And I have this issue with a lot of, fighters under my wing when they are so dominant in the amateur ranks and they start to, move up, starting to fight for titles, starting to fight, low-level professional fights. And now their competition has risen and, they're fighting and they're getting tested and they're dealing with adversity. So how does everybody respond to that adversity? And it's an unknown. So I'm going to be playing Mike Jackson some just because of the unknowns on rounds 2 and 3 and because of the physical advantages that Mike Jackson has. But as far as like pound for pound skill wise, Pete Rodriguez should go in there, make light work of Mike Jackson, get him out of there. The Victor Henry fight, it comes down to, do you think the first performance was a fluke? Did Howdy Barcelos have a poor night? Did Victor Henry outperform, his standards? I think that he's a really talented fighter. He had a phenomenal international career over in Japan, where he has fought legitimate competition throughout his entire tenure. So, like, this is a guy that hasn't fought soft competition. He's fought number one guys over and over. And now we're finally starting to see his skills under the UFC banner. I think that this is a step up in competition from a name perspective, because you are talking about a guy in Rafael Assunção who has some massive victories in the UFC. He has a win over Rob Font, a win over Marlon Moraes, a win over Aljamain Sterling. So, like, clearly he's doing something right in a lot of these fights. And Father Time is undefeated, and most of those fights were about 5 years ago. Still, this is a situation where it could be recency bias. Everybody wanted to get on Victor Henry. I like Victor Henry in the fight. I like where he's at in 2022. But as far as like trustworthy candidates, I would probably say that Joanderson Brito would probably be my most trustworthy candidate going up against the guy who's coming in on short notice. And I really feel like I view Joanderson Brito in such high regard, where I think that he can make a splash in the division. Dynamic striking, super powerful, good jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And against Lucas Alexander, who's on short notice, it's an opportunity. And there are better opportunities that present themselves inside the UFC, but this is a very tough one. And I think that Joanderson Brito at 9,400, he's one of my favorite inside the distance plays. I don't think that Alexander's a bad fighter by any means from all the tape study that I looked at. I just think that it's a tough challenge to do on a very short week.
One thing I'll say about Lucas Alexander, I think he does train out at Shoot the Box.
Yep.
And they got some Flintstone vitamins down in that camp that are just, their fighters have been insane lately. But I do think Joanderson Brito, I compare him to a cannonball. He gets like shot out of a cannon at the beginning of the fight. He is ultra aggressive, got a lot of pop in his hands. But well, let me talk about the Assunção fight, Victor Henry fight. The one thing I will say about the Victor Henry Barcelos fight, that was a really good matchup stylistically for Henry. Barcelos is ultra aggressive, and he kind of gassed in that fight. Kind of had, once Barcelos started to wrestle, he was already tired. Rafael Assunção, much better defensively than Barcelos. And I will say Assunção level of competition he's fought in the last 4 fights has been crazy. He did get sent to the shadow realm by Cody Garbrandt, which is a concern now because you saw him get TKO'd by Ricky Simone. Is that chin gone? We'll find out. He is getting older. I do think Assunção does have a path to victory here if he uses his wrestling. I think he has a wrestling advantage. That being said, he is 6,900, but if you do look at his box scores, even if he has wrestling-based decisions, he hasn't been scoring too well. He generally isn't a high-output guy. So I will be taking some stabs on Assunção, but I'm not expecting him, like, if he has a wrestling win, to go over 100. Like, you have to expect, like, 70, 80 points here. I mean, you have to take some stabs in some of these dogs. Like, it's just not possible to put 6 favorites in there. So while I think Henry is a deserved favorite, minus 400 does seem a little bit wide to me. In terms of the Pete Rodriguez-Mike Jackson fight, the one thing I do worry about with Pete Rodriguez is in Mike Jackson's last fight against Dean Barry, where he won by DQ because Dean Barry nut shot at him and then scratched his eye, is in the beginning of that round, Dean Barry, who was also at a height and reach disadvantage against Mike Jackson, did struggle to get on the inside. He kind of had a crash forward. Mike Jackson dancing around. I think if Mike Jackson can survive that first round, which could be a tall order against Pete Rodriguez, if he can survive that first round and get Pete Rodriguez into uncharted territory. I think he can, work his jab, work his boxing, and maybe get to a striking based decision here. Granted, he is very cheap, so he doesn't need much. I don't know. Like, obviously, I'm going to play both sides. I'm more heavy on Pete Rodriguez, but I do think we can get to some question marks if this fight gets out of the first round.
Yeah, 100%. So like similar to how I build NFL lineups, where I'm kind of constructing based on narratives of how I think the game's going to go. If a team's going to fall behind, how is that going to result in certain players getting boosted usage, or who could possibly fall out of usage if they fall behind, and so on and so forth. I kind of like to, think about how I project these fights going. And if Mike Rodriguez is able to, if Mike Jackson is able to survive the early barrage of Pete Rodriguez, I think then it becomes a closer fight. It's not going to be a minus 700 fight at that point. So anytime the odds start tilting in your favor, it's an MMA bout, man. Anything can happen. And, what happens if, we have Mike Jackson go to the takedown well? Something we really don't even know about Pete Rodriguez. Can he grapple that well? So there are so many unknowns in an MMA bout where you have to embrace the volatility and play with variance, and kind of just expect certain wonky things to happen from time to time. Similar to a Rafael Sunsao, you have Mike Jackson there. If they can get just a win in the 6K range, it opens up so much for your lineups, especially if a lot of these top 9,000, 8,000 options come through. So, I'm building certain lineups, how I project, the fights to go. If somebody has poor cardio, I'm going to look at the ownership and I'm going to say, yeah, that's a little light. I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive on that. And so, I mean, this is a weird week, not a solid card by any means. So I'm expecting possibly a loser in the optimal lineup, possibly a 6,000 or low 7,000 fighter scoring 65 points in the optimal lineup. I just think something weird is going to happen.
Yeah. It would have been a bit better if Royval Askarov was on this card still.
For sure.
Weight issues. I see your super chat, my filler arc. I will get to it in a second, but first I want to talk to you a little bit about PrizePicks, our sponsor. It is a prop-based contest. You are not playing against anyone else. You're playing with yourself. You don't have to worry about Pete taking all your money in a contest. So no sharks, no optimizers, no mass entries. It's a 5-player lineup, can net you up to 10x your entry fees. You can go cross sports. If you like football, you like hockey, you like basketball, you like MMA, you can, put 5 in from any sport you want. And we have an offer to go along with that. If you click the link in the description below, you get 1 free month of Stokastic plus Platinum and up to $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit with PrizePicks. If you are in a legal state, PrizePicks is legal in 30 states across the country. You definitely should take advantage of it. Not legal in New Jersey, so I can't play. But if you are in a legal state, definitely take advantage of that offer. My filler arc with a $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much for that. It says, Mr. Pete, Maximoff in 100% of my lineups. Good idea or no?
No, my filler, my boy. No, I mean, it's a close fight and it's a grappling fight that could end up being a boring striking match, or maybe we will see phenomenal scrambles. A lot of times strengths negate each other, and it turns out to, the fighters start to go into the areas where they are weakest. So a lot of times 2 phenomenal strikers will start to test each other in the grappling. 2 phenomenal grapplers will start to test each other in the striking because they cannot have success with their usual game plan. So, I mean, for me, if you're playing 3 lineups and that means 100%, sure. But if you're playing 150 lineups or even 20, I just feel like you're kind of, I'm not a fan of that. That matchup's a little weird to me. And I feel like there are some other fighters where I could be like, yeah, okay, 100%, no problem. This week is not one of those. But thank you for the super chat. And guys, we have almost 350 people in here checking us out. Josh and I really appreciate you guys. If you could do us a favor, hit that like button, get us over 120 likes, shoot your questions into chat. We will get there to help you guys win some money today.
Yeah, shoot your questions in there. We should have time at the end. Let's talk about those important mid-range fights. I think the Maximoff-Malkoun fight is an important one, along with the Dusko Todorovic, Jordan Wright. We just started talking about Maximoff-Malkoun. Let's talk about that for a second. They are both Well, Maximoff is a very good wrestler. Jacob Malkoun is the Energizer Bunny. That dude is a dog. He is Robert Whitaker's training partner. His UFC debut, he got flatlined by Phil Hawes in 20 seconds. Be like, oh, he's just in the UFC because he's Robert Whitaker's training partner. But then you saw him go to work. After that, he beat Abdul Razak Al Hassan by decision, grinded him. He cooked him to the bone, 8 takedowns there. He beat AJ Dobson, landing 6 takedowns. He lost a close fight to Brendan Allen, but he took down Brendan Allen 7 times. Brendan Allen looked awful in that fight. Maximoff, on the other hand, he got caught in his last fight by Andrei Petrovsky, lost by a submission early in anaconda choke. It wasn't really because, his skills failed him there. He just got caught in a choke. It happens, especially early in the fight when the guys aren't, sweaty, got caught. Now, Maximoff is a very, very good wrestler. Malkoun doesn't have the best takedown defense. The second Brendan Allen shot on him, he got him down. I think, if this ends up being a striking battle, it is going to be an ugly fight. Mm-hmm. These two guys aren't the best MMA strikers. I think Maximoff is going to have success wrestling. That being said, Malkoun does not take bottom position lightly. He's always working. He's always trying to get up. I think we could see some scrambles. What you said before, I do worry that the wrestling negates each other, and we do see some ugly striking exchanges. But what I'm hoping for is a very fun wrestling match. It's kind of hard to pick a winner here. If I had a gun to my head, I think I would take Maximoff just because he is the better wrestler. He is like a wet blanket in some of his fights. So this is a fight I want a lot of exposure to, and I think I'm going to have a little bit more exposure to Maximoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fight that normally if either one of these fighters were on the card, I would get massive exposure to them because they're grappling upside. I just don't know how it translates to success today against each other. So, like, I have plenty of exposure, but I didn't go over the field necessarily. I will take the value on Jacob Malkoun slightly more than Maximoff just because of the salary. And the fact that I really like he's a part of Robert Whitaker's training camp. And I actually really think that team's a solid team. They prepare really well. And I haven't seen enough from Maximov's striking. Like Malkoun looks bad. So does Maximoff. But I actually have been following along with some of Malkoun's training. So it's a slight lean to him, but it's almost a neutral play. I feel like there's better fights to target. If somebody does get top position, I wonder who's heavier on top. I would probably say Maximov is heavier on top, but it all comes down to sweeps, which could possibly elevate the scores of one another. We just got to have the winner of this bout allow their opponents back to the feet and resulting in another takedown. So that could happen. I mean, Malkoun shot a ridiculous amount of times against Brendan Allen, 14 attempts against Brendan Allen, 16 against Dobson, 24 against Al Hassan. And then we have seen Maximov replicate that and basically do the same exact thing. 16 against Soriano, 15 against Brundage. So it could be, I mean, this is a sneaky, I might just do a stack of this fight just because who knows? It might just be grappling madness.
Yeah. And these guys are in unbelievable shape to be shooting that many times. So I don't think getting tired will be an issue here. The one thing I'll say about Maximov striking, he's a young kid. He's 24 years old. He fights out of the Diaz brothers camp.
Yeah.
So maybe he's improving from camp to camp. We'll see. I mean, even if he doesn't make huge strides, I think he still does have the slight advantage over Malkoun from the striking standpoint. I see another super chat from Doogie Dooger. Thank you very much. 189 super chat. Hughes and Wright or Malkoun Serkinov, FanDuel MVP.
You lost me at Jordan Wright, but I understand.
We'll get to that fight in a second.
Yeah. I mean, I would say Malkoun and Serkinov personally, but I think that you're targeting the correct fights. Like the Wright and the Todorovic fights, completely volatile. Serkinov, Menefield, completely volatile. So I mean, you have the correct mindset when it's coming to constructing the lineup. So for me, it'd be a Malkoun Serkinov, but I probably have both of them.
Yeah, they're both very volatile. Let's
Yeah.
talk about this the bash of the big heads here. Dusko Todorovic against Jordan Wright. Todorovic, the rightful favorite. Jordan Wright. The one thing I'll say about Jordan Wright, you should not sleep on him. Like if he knocks out Dusko Todorovic, I would not be surprised. Now they both are 2-5 in the UFC. All four of the wins from both guys, I think none of those guys are still in the UFC anymore. That being said, I think both fighters can finish the other here. I am going to favor Dusko Todorovic. I think his overall MMA game is better. That being said, one thing you see on tape with him, and it bothers me a lot. He rushes in with his giant pumpkin head and his chin straight up in the air. And if Jordan Wright finds that chin, one of these guys is going to sleep. But overall MMA game, Dusko Todorovic, I favor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm favoring Todorovic. I'm planting my flag behind Todorovic in the most volatile fight on the entire slate.
Minus 660 to end inside the distance.
Yeah, it's not going the distance.
Yeah.
And, I was targeting the under 1.5 earlier in the week, and it was like minus 220. I think it's already getting steamed up to almost minus 250. So I'm expecting violence. There's technical deficiencies on both sides. Dusko leaves his hands down, coming off a bad knockout. Wright gets knocked out, has been knocked out several times in brutal fashion, just got submitted against Marc-Andre Barriault. So the way that they fight, it's kind of like two bulls colliding, and who's going to come out ahead? I'm going to pick Todorovic, but I will say that for some of my lineups, I think like 30% of my lineups, I have Jordan Wright, and I'm just going to close my eyes and hope for the best with that as well.
Yeah, and if this fight hits the third round, it is going to be a mess. An absolute circus. It will be a meme, like if this fight gets to the third round. But
now, if it goes late, I would actually think that starts to work in Todorovic's favor because of his grappling skill set, his strong grappling. He has really good ground and pound when it hits the mat. I don't see a world where that happens.
Yeah, he did go the distance with the RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez, which is more than you can say for Jordan Wright. I believe all of his fights have ended in the first round outside of the Joaquin Buckley knockout, which went 18 seconds into the second round. So if this fight gets extended, Todorovic definitely has the advantage. Let's talk about another one of the super chat fights here. Serkinov against Alonzo Menafield. Misha Serkinov coming back to the light heavyweight division after getting submitted by Wellington Turman at middleweight, which is a big red flag for me because Serkinov, best known for submission grappling, getting submitted, looked a little bit lost out there. We know kind of what Alonzo Menafield is. He went up to heavyweight and lost to William Knight. William Knight's an absolute unit, so I kind of give a pass there at heavyweight. He just ground and pounded out Askar Mozarov, who kind of padded his record a little bit here. He Von Flewed Fabio Charant, but like anytime he's taken a step up in competition against Oven St. Preux or even Devin Clark, he kind of ran out of gas. Now, Misha Serkinov, I don't know what to make of him. He's lost 4 of his last 5, got flying kneed by Johnny Walker. He got knocked out by Ryan Spann. He lost a split decision to Christoph Jotko, and then he just got submitted by Wellington Turman. The one fight he did win, it was a very messy ground affair with Jimmy Crute, and he ended up winning by Peruvian necktie, which I wish more fighters went for because it's always there. But not a lot of people jump for it because if you miss it, you're going to end up on your back. Menafield has the power to knock out Serkinov, but Menafield loves to just get in that clinch and hold you up against the cage. I don't know what to make of this fight. I feel like if Serkinov can get it on the ground, he can pound out Menafield, vice versa, the same as well. I think you have to have both sides of this fight.
Yeah, this is another fight that's a priority for me when it comes to building lineups, going to stokastic.fantasycruncher.com. Important to target the fights that you want. I create a group, and I think that the Menafield Serkinov fight fits the bill. On the feet, Menafield is exactly what we want from a round one guy. He's a striking specialist. has early KO upside. There are concerns about his ground game as well. And I don't really hold his last win against Askar Mozharov in such high regard. The guy probably should have never had the opportunity in the UFC, but that's not Menifield's fault. Menifield went out there and did what he's supposed to do. He got rid of him early. There are question marks if Menifield was put on his back, and there are some elementary mistakes in the grappling that I have seen from him. Now, on the flip side, if Cirkunov is able to land on the mat somehow, top position, get Menifield down, I think it can get ugly really, really quickly because Cirkunov's ground game is absolutely legit. Jimmy Crute has a very strong ground game, and he made him look like it was, a black belt against a blue belt. Like, that was phenomenal. And he overcame adversity in that as well. I don't like the volatility and the nature of how he loses his fights. He kind of goes out on his shield, which is good for us for targeting GPPs. But you have to recognize the volatility and be careful. I am picking Misha Cirkunov from a value standpoint, just because I do think that he looked decently well on the scale. I don't like fighters who are going up and down in weight classes and experimenting with, lighter weight class. No, I got to bump back up. Like, I don't know. But I was surprised at how good he looked on the scale. And if he's able to absorb some of these shots or just immediately clinch and incorporate takedowns, this could be one of the fighters in the 7,000 range that breaks through for us. I understand the risk of him getting a single digit score. It happens often in a lot of his fights. But as far as like the underdogs that I'm targeting, for me personally, I don't like believing in Jordan Wright's skill set, even though it's a good matchup. I'd much rather target a Misha Cirkunov or a Cub Swanson today. That's personally how I'm playing. I am getting to Jordan Wright, but I kind of view Cub Swanson, Cirkunov a little bit higher than I view Jordan Wright.
Yeah, I wouldn't target Cirkunov in cash at all, but he is a boom or bust GPP play here. If he wins, he's going to be optimal because he's going to have wrestling, he's going to have ground pounder submission. The problem is if Menifield lands flush in the first round, will he be able to take it? That's the big question, which will get answered in a few hours here. Let's talk about that Cub Swanson fight. Cub Swanson going down to bantamweight, which was a bit weird for me. Someone in our Discord said it's probably because he wants to fight Uriah Faber. They've talked about that. I guess he wanted to see if he can make the weight, and he did. He looked pretty good on the scale, I thought. He didn't look like, the first time Jose Aldo dropped from 145 to 135, he was like eating lettuce for 2 weeks just to get it. Like, Cub Swanson looked pretty healthy on the scale. Jonathan Martinez is a fighter I respect a lot. I like his skill set. Doesn't translate very well for DFS. He does have some good finishes. He doesn't fight at the highest pace. Maybe Cub Swanson brings out in him. Cub Swanson fights at a very high pace. If you have friends who are on the fence about getting into MMA, I suggest you send them the Cub Swanson Korean Superboy Do Ho Choi fight. That was an absolutely bonkers fight. From a DFS perspective, I think, Cub Swanson being the underdog here, a lot of people are going to be on him. Jonathan Martinez, saw someone in our Discord say he can't even finish a sandwich, which I thought was pretty funny. He did knock out Frankie Saenz in the third round. 3 knockdowns in that fight. He did have a knockdown against Davey Grant. I just think, he knows when he has a fighter hurt to take his time. He has only topped out at 88 significant strikes in a fight. So I think from a DFS perspective, Cub Swanson would be the preferred option just because you're saving a bunch of salary there.
Yeah, I like Cub today. And somebody called me biased because I've trained with Cub before. I mean, bias aside, I would still like Cub today. Like, I mean, look at his resume and look who he's fought. I understand he's 39 years old. I don't like the experiments. So I don't like the fact that he's at bantamweight. I didn't think that he looked terrible, but there's not a lot to him. So for Jonathan Martinez, if I'm Martinez's coach, I'm saying dig the body with a front kick, with a round kick to set up a high kick, or step in with a knee. Like, that's the best way to test somebody on their weight cut, is to dig them to the body and then start to test the chin. So what comes first in this situation? Does Martinez actually pick up the biggest win of his career over an aging veteran, but still an extremely skilled veteran? It's possible. I made some lineups because of that. But in a bubble, who do I like more? I still like Cub. I've seen more from Cub. I know that outside of the body kicks, he's very durable, and Giga Chikadze kicks like nobody else. So I don't really know if we can hold Martinez's kicks to the same level of Giga Chikadze. I'm just going to say no, we can't. Cub Swanson hits really hard, and we'll test that questionable chin of Jonathan Martinez today.
Yeah, and for people saying, oh, Cub Swanson, his durability has gone. Outside of that body kick, which was absolutely nasty against Giga Chikadze, he hasn't been finished by strikes since 2009. And that was against Jose Aldo with a ridiculous flying knee, like right out of the gate. So like he is durable. We'll see if that durability translates to 135. Jonathan Martinez, like you said, does have some pretty good knees. That will be the test for Cub Swanson.
Yep.
If he can get through those, I think, he'll put a pace on him late and get the W there. That is the co-main event as well. I like this fight. For DFS, like if Cub Swanson wins, maybe you're getting like 75, 80, 85 points. I think that might be good enough on this slate. He is going to be popular. Just be aware of that. So he's probably going to be one of the more popular dogs just because he's a household name and he is a very popular fighter. What else the two fights we haven't mentioned yet, I'll get to in a second. I just want to give you guys a BetMGM NHL promo. I am the hockey guy. If you didn't know who I am, I do the hockey shows. We BetMGM, bet $10 to win $200 if any team scores a goal tonight. It is a 12-game NHL slate tonight. 24 teams. The chances are one of the teams is going to score a goal. So all you got to do is bet $10. They'll give you $200. It's basically free money from sportsbooks. They don't do that very often, so take advantage of that. Has to be first-time BetMGM users. It has to be a money line bet. Can't be a live bet. So go bet a money line $10. They'll give you $200 if a team scores a goal. If 24 teams go scoreless tonight, that is the worst luck in the history of your life. Chances are you're going to go 21 on your money to there. So first-time BetMGM users, go take advantage of that. The two fights we haven't mentioned, one is a mid-range bout between Mana Martinez and Brandon Davis. The other is Tarsuto Taira against CJ Vergara. I think that is a sneaky little fight there. Vergara missed weight. He has had weight issues in the past. They're probably going to make him move up to bantamweight. I think he missed weight 2 fights in a row. He did beat Clayton Rodriguez in his last time out on the Oliveira Gaethje card. I was actually surprised he won that fight. He looked better than I thought, especially striking. Now he's taking on Tatsuro Taira, who beat Carlos Candelario in his UFC debut. He had a knockdown in that fight. He was going for some submissions. I don't know what to make of this fight, really, because we need underdogs on this card. And Vergara is a 220 favorite, but he missed weight by 3 pounds. And when you have that big of a weight miss, you wonder if he just called it off and knows he wasn't going to make weight. And maybe he, I'm not a fighter. I'm not in the fighter room, but sometimes you see these guys kill themselves and still miss by like half a pound. A 3 pound miss kind of is a red flag. Like, oh, I know I'm not going to make it. I want to be able to be in the cage 100% tomorrow. Maybe I'm going to take some stabs on Vergara. There aren't many underdogs that I like. He's coming off a win that surprised me. Might go after some Vergara here.
Yeah, I have minimal Vergara today. I really think that Tatsuro Taira is well-rounded and he's developing. I should say he's well-rounded. He's very dominant in his grappling and his wrestling is tricky. His striking is developing, and that is the one weak area within his game. So CJ Vergara needs to sprawl and brawl all night, keep it on the feet, test the young fighter. It's a step up of competition for both fighters, right? They're both going to be tested in areas they haven't really before. I think that Vergara is better than what a lot of people say, as evidenced in the Clayton Rodriguez performance. And he's going to be there for the whole 15 minutes. So he's going to test you and he's going to have good cardio. I just don't know if he can deal with poor positions in the grappling sequences. Like I really think that a Tatsuro Taira backpacks him. It could be it. Like, and submission defense is very difficult, especially when you're dealing with somebody who's on another level. And we have seen Vergara early on within his career get tested and submitted. Doesn't mean that he hasn't developed since then. I am going to hope that Tatsuro Taira mixes in his takedowns and en route to a submission. That's kind of how I'm building some of my lineups. And I will tell you that Carlos Candelario, a guy that I'm really familiar with, has some good jiu-jitsu as well. So that's possibly what prevented the finish from the Tatsuro Taira side. So Vergara could have strategically missed weight. It's a risky proposition, right? Because you don't want to get cut from the UFC from missing weight. You also don't want to be forced to move up a weight class. But I will tell you, if we're facing a wrestler or we're facing a guy with a significant grappling edge and you come in here strategically heavier, it could make a difference. Those couple pounds make a difference, man. And it could lead to a more competitive fight. The longer the fight's on the feet, the more I'm thinking that CJ Vergara is having success. Tatsuro needs to close the distance early and, put Vergara on his back. It's just a matter of if he does or not.
Yeah. Vergara has to keep the fight standing. If he doesn't, a submission for Taira definitely in play. Candelario defended very nicely. Can Vergara do the same? I'm not sure. We'll find out in a couple of hours. Again, the last fight we didn't. Oh no, we have a couple of fights we didn't talk about. We have Mana Martinez, Brandon Davis, and the other one is Pierre Rodriguez, Sam Hughes. I feel like Sam Hughes is going to be a potentially popular underdog just because in her last two fights she has won and put up big scores. This is women's strawweight, which is basically armbar from bottom guard division. You don't know, like there's arm bars all over the place. Pierre Rodriguez got a contract through Dana White's Contender Series. Then she fought in April this year. She beat Kay Hansen, who is no longer with UFC. She is now with OnlyFans. Sam Hughes, on the other hand, not the best skill set, but she has a big heart, and that goes a long way in the women's division. She just beat Estela Nunes and Else Reed. The Else Reed fight, she brutally pounded her out in the third round there. Sam Hughes before that lost 3 in a row. Her UFC debut against Tisha Torres, that was just making your UFC debut against Tisha Torres on short notice, not ideal. She looked a little bit better the next two fights going up against Loma Lokambume and Uliana Pinheiro. Not sure on Pierre Rodriguez's skill set. I think Sam Hughes can have some wrestling success here. Rodriguez does defend takedowns at 75%. Kay Hansen did get her down 2 times. I am not a believer in Kay Hansen's wrestling, so if Sam Hughes has a little bit more better wrestling, I do think this fight can hit the mat. I do worry about Sam Hughes' ownership. I might have a little bit of Pierre Rodriguez just as a leverage play.
Yeah, so Pierre Rodriguez is one of the fighters that I'm nervous to not have as more exposure than I do. Naturally, I'm a little bit higher in the salary range that I'm targeting fighters, or I'm a little bit lower in the salary range. So every week I say there's certain fighters that kind of get, lost in the shuffle. And for me personally, with my exposure, whether I'm right or wrong, Pierre Rodriguez is a fighter that I'm kind of like, I don't know if I really want to put so much stock in a Kay Hansen victory. Like I have really seen some true development from Sam Hughes, despite not thinking she was UFC level. Like, the switch to Fortis MMA, the incorporating good takedowns into ground and pound. The issue with all of her fights is she gets beat up for the first half of the fight. And then after getting beat up and treated like an Everlast punching bag, the bag is still there swinging, and her opponents are tired and fatigued, and then she takes advantage of it. So if you do not get her out of there early, she is one of those round 2, round 3 fighters that can really come from behind and pull off the victory. So, I mean, I have exposure to both sides, but it's a fight where I'm like, man, I really don't want to get to either one of these with a ton of conviction. Leaning towards the Sam Hughes because of the development and the unknowns of Pierre Rodriguez getting truly pushed by somebody who's just like a junkyard dog. So it's a Sam Hughes slight lean because of women's MMA volatility. But as far as like the fight in general, I'm a little light on the fight. It makes me nervous.
Yeah, I will say from a DFS perspective, Pierre Rodriguez is definitely going to be low owned. She's kind of priced in no man's land there. So if you want to take some game theory contrarian options, Pierre Rodriguez is going to be low owned, and you hope she can find the finish. But Sam Hughes, hard to get out of there. The last I see Eddie with a super chat, 3 must-have DK GPP, 1 lineup for all the gold. We'll get to that in a second. I just want to talk about Mana Martinez, Brandon Davis. This is a mid-range fight. I feel like Brandon Davis is kind of a DFS darling, despite losing 5 of his last 6. Most recently got knocked out. He lost a couple close split decisions to Giga Chikadze and Kwang Ho Kang. He also got banana split against Zabit Magomed Shapirov. I guess the Sulev stretch, they call it. His only win since 2018 is against Randy Costa. As much as I like Randy Costa, I don't want to toss around the word fraudulent because he is an MMA fighter and he will send me to Narnia. But in his last fight, he looked not great. Brandon Davis won by rear naked choke there. Mana Martinez, on the other hand, he just lost a decision to Ronnie Lawrence. No fault there. Ronnie Lawrence is a Tasmanian devil. He did beat Guido Canetti by split decision, and he did lose on Dana White's Contender Series by submission to Draco Rodriguez. Again, Brandon Davis, the underdog here. Mana Martinez probably going to come in lower owned than Brandon Davis. If Brandon Davis had any wrestling at all, I would be more apt to be like, I really like Brandon Davis here. He only lands 0.7 takedowns per 15 minutes. His takedown accuracy is under 15%. Mana Martinez takedown defense, I don't believe in at all. So if Brandon Davis comes in wrestling at all and has some success, I think he can win this fight. This could be a pretty ugly decision here, but looking to save some salary, Brandon Davis under 8,000 could be pretty popular here.
Yeah, it's a tricky fight, right? And it's a high pace fight. Brandon Davis is he's dropped the ball a lot in a lot of winnable matchups. Giga Chikadze was a winnable matchup because he was a talented striker, and we have seen a fighter put together the correct game plan against him, and that was Calvin Kattar, of put him on his back foot, incorporate hands into takedowns. Obviously, Calvin is leaps and bounds ahead of Brandon Davis, but the game plan was there. Underdog situation against Dana Bakary, dropped the ball in that, got knocked out in round 1. If you look at his box score on stokastic.fantasycruncher.com, there's a lot of red. So he's struggled a lot inside the UFC, outside the Randy Costa win and the Steven Peterson win. I mean, he's fought tough guys. And I do think that this could be an exciting kickboxing matchup. It's just, is the durability gone? Because that last knockout against Dana Bakary was pretty bad. And Mana Martinez made a career out of early finishes with his hands and very good striking. So I hope that this stays on the feet. I hope that Brandon Davis doesn't go the takedown well. He could. He went 3 of 7 in the takedown well against Giga Chikadze. And that is a path of least resistance when you're fighting Mana Martinez, as evidenced in the Ronnie Lawrence fight. It's an interesting narrative of how you could build lineups with the Brandon Davis takedown approach. But in a 50-50 striking affair, I'm going to be favoring Mana Martinez. Less durability questions, less defeats, very, very good power. Whereas Brandon Davis is more like the steady Eddie, Energizer Bunny from minute 1 to minute 15.
Nothing to disagree with there. Let's get to that super chat. $5 from Eddie. 3 must-have DK GPP, 1 lineup for all the gold. Do you want 3 more? I can just submit a lineup for you if you want.
Yeah, right.
No, but I think, just without giving away what I'm doing, my lineup today, I think Pete Rodriguez, Victor Henry, you want one of those big favorites. Pete Rodriguez has a good inside the distance prop. You want one of those guys, or even a Joe Anderson Brito. I'm not sure what I want to do in terms of exposure to the main event. I might be under the field there, but if you have a lean in that fight, you can do that. You definitely want one of these highly volatile fights, either a Menefield Serkinov, a Battle of the Pumpkinheads with Todorovic and Wright, I know you're a little bit under on the field on Maximoff Malkoun. I like that fight. I'm hoping we see some wrestling and some reverses there. So I think you can pick and choose from there, but like you definitely want one of the big favorites. You want one of the volatile fights that are going to end, are favored to end inside the distance. And then if you like an underdog on this card, I think you just go with it despite the ownership, because there are not many trustworthy dogs here.
Yeah, Eddie, thank you for the super chat. So, I mean, I have I'm not playing heavy today. Like usually I play like heavy every single time. This is just a weird card. So, I'm pretty selective today, but what I will give you is I'll give you a high end, a mid priced, and then a low fighter that I think sets you up decently well. So, at the top end, I'll say Joe Anderson Brito. I just believe in his skills, fighting a guy on short notice. In the mid to upper 8 range, I'll go Dusko Todorovic. Just seems like a matchup that we're going to need one side or the other. Well-rounded skill set. And then as far as an underdog that I'll give you for the third fighter, I'll go with Cub Swanson. I mean, he has just a career of beating and competing against the top level competition. It's 2022. Has he really fallen that far? He could actually hit so hard that he knocks Jonathan Martinez out with relative ease. And, you know, if he lands, I could see Jonathan Martinez getting wobbled as he has in multiple fights. So those are the 3 fighters that I think it sets you up decently well. And I hope that you guys have a successful day, and good luck with the lineup, Eddie. You know, only a couple minutes left, guys. You guys could just hit that like button, get us to 120 likes. We would really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I will say for Cub Swanson, anyone willingly rocking a mustache in 2022, you got to be a dangerous man.
Yeah, you know what? Certain people pull it off, right? Like I couldn't pull it off. Cub seems to pull it off. So
yeah, I can't even grow a mustache. So here we are. Yeah, we have 2 minutes left. I guess I'll ask you, what is the one fight you're worried that you don't have enough of?
Ooh, good question, buddy. What fight am I worried that I don't have enough of? You know, it might be the Piero Rodriguez Sam Hughes fight.
I was thinking
like that
too.
seems like the one to me where I'm like, yeah, I have exposure more towards the dog, but Piera being in that kind of lost in the shuffle salary, no man's land. It's like that could be the one leverage spot where you see her break the slate.
Yeah, I'll just go on top of that. Taisuro Taira, I don't have too much here. Okay. I am worried about it. There's just so many guys in the top range. He kind of got overlooked for me. I might try to, 5 minutes to lock. I might try to work him in. Yeah. So for our resident fighter, Pete Rogers Jr., I am Josh Harris. Thank you for joining us. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe on the way out. It helps us. It helps you. You get free content more that way. And good luck, everybody, today.